Okay, we're going to call the Emergency Services Committee meeting to order now, please. Luke, do you mind doing our invocation?
Lord, thank you for giving us all the opportunity to wake up this morning and to do your work and giving us the opportunity to serve our citizens here. Lord, we pray that you keep the law enforcement officers in our county and in our state and our country safe. And we just appreciate the good work that you do for us. Amen.
Thank you. Okay, approval of the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Approval of the minutes from December 2nd. Okay, all in favor? Okay. All right, recognition of the public. Anybody? Public want to speak? Show no one. Report of the chairman. The only thing that I was going to comment on is that we've talked about the volunteer fire department requests. We've only had one that's turned in their request so far, but basically they're going to turn their request and we're going to expect them to, because we know they don't have the money to pay for anything in advance. We're asking that they send us their receipts afterwards. So they're going to make the request, we'll give them the money, and then they send us the receipt to ensure that they bought whatever they were requesting for, whatever we approved initially in that last month's meeting, or 2 months ago. So
$138,000.
Right. And the additional money we approved that went per, but each volunteer fire hall had different amounts that they were receiving. So does anybody have any questions on that? I know there was an email that was some questions, but that was when I had the flu. I missed them. Okay, that is my only report. Report of the county mayor.
No report, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Report of the sheriff. Thank you. You're not emailing this to me too.
I did.
Oh, you did? I did not get it. Only one I got is.
I didn't email.
Only one I got is volunteer. Only one I got was a volunteer fire one. So.
It was probably 3 o'clock.
Oh, there it is. 4 o'clock. I got it at 4 o'clock. You're right. I'm sorry, Aaron.
In January, the sheriff's office collected $29,969.37 from inmate commissary fees, and a total from all others brings it up to $51,849. Our average daily population for January was 815 inmates. Animal Control Division answered 228 calls for service. 116 animals came into the shelter, 143 left. The call summary is on the back page there. You can look through that. Of note, there were 90 mental transports in January.
90?
90.
What's your average?
Well, it usually runs between 70 and 110.
Update from the legislature as it pertains to guidance about the mental transports. They said they were going to pilot for 5 counties.
So that came out different than it went in. So what they did was they came up with a grant for $4 million with that money to be distributed across all 95 counties to contract with private services to spend that on mental health transports, or for the sheriff himself to do it, which was not the spirit of what we had envisioned. The state also, as of yet, hasn't really told us how to spend that on those folks. So the money is just sitting there waiting on some more rules. I think it'll probably be a big topic this week.
So we can contact the state legislators and on a personal level and ask them to,
Let me get through Thursday and see what comes of a session of talking about this, and then that might be the case. I know every county's suffering just like we are, especially counties that are far flung. Macon County, every one of theirs has to go to at least as far as Cookeville, and that's a huge strain on a department that size. Imagine what happens in Clay County.
Right.
Where
I
there's
can tell you it's a topic of County Mayor Association, it's a topic of the Sheriff's Association. We're doing everything we can to get some relief because it's very expensive and it's taxing for us. These counties who have no resources, it's crushing for them.
sure. Well, if there's anything, but if we can promote additional assistance as far as getting more citizens to contact them, then that would be good too. That might help, who knows?
And these
Can't
folks
hurt.
these folks are patients. They're not prisoners. They
Mhm.
don't need to be in the back of a police car wearing handcuffs.
Right, right. Okay,
Exactly right. It is not an equitable situation.
that's not really okay. Okay. Well,
Alrighty.
thank you very much. Please email me as you know more, Aaron, later this week after Thursday. Anybody have any questions for him? I'm sorry, other than that? Report of the fire department.
The spreadsheet I passed around for 2019, I haven't finished compiling all the numbers for January yet. 2019 report is only missing 1 month for Gallatin Volunteer, but taking into account, they run probably about 35, 40 calls in that missing month. We're looking at an increase of the last 2 years of 450 calls a year. Yeah. So we finished 2019 with 4,757 calls.
Did you have any questions or anything you wanted to add on? I know that I think you're the only fire department that's made a request yet as far as the additional monies.
Wasn't me.
Wasn't you?
No.
Who was it?
I don't know. I don't know who made the request.
Sorry. it was
Okay.
not you. So Holland has
Okay.
requested the $11,020.
Yeah.
But that's the only one that's made a request so far.
I know
Or if you have any,
my department, the 2 pieces of equipment we requested, the orders went in today.
okay. So
And I know, just talking to a couple other departments, that they're working on them,
okay. So
getting
did you end up doing
quotes.
a PO or calling David Lawing and
For my department,
when you made your order?
typically what I do, we'll get 30 days once we
Okay.
receive the equipment. And
Okay.
usually what I do is I send in the order for the equipment today, and I'll wait about a week or 10 days and request the money. And then,
Yeah, they don't go through a PO process.
no.
Well,
See,
there's been some discussion over whether they do POs or not. And
Yeah,
So they-
according to David, they are not.
They do
right, yeah,
not.
that's
They
what
can't.
David and
They're
I
not
talked
for Coleman
about, not to
County.
do that.
So they just give them a lump sum, basically.
Right. Well, that's what David and I talked about, but there've been so many questions about it, that's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, when I talked to them, they said what you said.
The same thing, just to
Request
request
the
it.
money and then turn in the receipts
Yeah.
at the end.
And they kind of know that at the end, if they don't turn in the receipts, that there's money next year that hangs in the balance for them. They don't kind of follow through this year, is kind of the way
Okay.
I
didn't know how that worked, so.
they don't follow through with turning in the receipts, that they kind of risk their funding for the following
Oh,
year.
okay.
If they're not gonna follow kind of the guidelines of the rules, is what I
Okay.
was
Uh,
instructed. Because we were kind of concerned about follow through and making sure that we are accounting for every dime and every penny, you know.
My own question would be, what if you don't use all the money? What does that just go back to the county, or?
It stays in the county because you don't get any money appropriated to your department or to your.
Well, the
agency.
money's already been appropriated to volunteer fire though.
At the beginning, January the 1st, everything that's in any account rolls back into county generals, turn back in. You know, every year we got about,
Not January.
July 1. So we have
So we need to
approximately
hurry up.
what, $2 to $2.5, $3 million every year that's rolled back in.
Right. But if they
Because-
go ahead and do this now, and then there's leftover money in April,
Then they can come back and.
They
and come back and we can spend
still
that
make a
money
request.
in additional
Yeah.
ways, as long as we do it by July 1. That's what I would think, correct?
Because if you ask for $10,000
We-
something and you get it for 8, that money's gonna come back and we're gonna decide again.
And that's a-
where it's
And that's a great
That's-
deal. We want you to do that.
Well,
I'd
no,
love for you to have money left over.
You won't decide, I don't think, because you appropriated X amount of dollars. So X amount of dollars is available until
Until
July
July
the
1.
But that's not what
Right.
I'm saying.
But we're saying if they get a
He's
deal,
saying that we approved through these lists $10,000 and they only wound up spending 8 on the equipment, that 2,000 will, before July 1st, will come back here.
come back to this committee.
Something
Right.
has to happen with that
Because
$2,000.
this committee, that money was appropriated to this committee, for this
What you're
committee to
saying is
decide.
you approved specific items. You just
Right.
give them money.
Right.
Okay.
But we were approved, this committee was approved X amount of dollars, what was it, 138,000? X amount of dollars should divvy out as needed. So if they end up saving money from the 138 that we've already said
And you
approved
can
for
look at another
spend,
request.
then we can look at another request.
I didn't know exactly what context you were
As
saying.
long as it's by July 1st, so everybody needs to
Okay.
move it on along.
Okay.
Get all their stuff, because, wheels turn slow sometimes, so.
I mean, every time I buy something, I get one price and then
And then you go to buy it and it's
it's
different.
$50 less or it's $50 more,
Right,
you know.
and that's why we need
And
to,
that's what I'm talking about.
yeah, and so if we can go ahead and get everybody's through, that would be great to know if we have, I would love for us to have money left over,
Okay. I'll put that word out.
reappropriate. So if anybody can get a better deal, tell them, encourage them to try.
Any word on the CTASC report?
No, I reached out to them 3 different times in the last week, but nothing.
Okay.
It's kind of what I thought. I kind of thought it was ambitious for them to think that they were going to give us something over the holidays. They seemed to be acting like all the work was basically done, and it was just a matter of sending it to us. So I let them get by with that, but now the holidays are done, so they need to get back to us now, and they will, shortly.
That's all I have.
Any other questions for him? Comments, concerns? Okay, thank you. Okay, report of Emergency Services Director. Yeah, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
I love the weather we've had the last 2 days.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I'll keep it year round.
Before we get into the report that's in front of you, we closed out 2019, our busiest year ever, had over 28,000 responses. And that trend is continuing. We're probably the only avenue of public safety that is so sensitive to the media. So our last 2 weeks has had a spike in people who think they have the coronavirus,
Shocking.
even if they've not been to China or drank Corona. So that's just part of it. Put a lime in it. That's it. I thought- We decided they ought to call it the Kung Flu. Be more appropriate than the coronavirus.
I
So,
like it. That's catchy.
That is
yeah,
good.
I
That's a
think
good,
I
that's a
think
good
it would
name.
work. January numbers, first page, as you can tell, traditionally January is a little bit low. Most of these MCO insurance companies, they reset on the calendar year rather than on the fiscal year. So they're getting everything back realigned. It typically rebounds very well in February, as you can see from the last 2 years' trend. Our net transport revenue, we're holding pretty steady there. We're a little bit below what our budget projection was, but in conversation that I've had with Mr. Lawing and what we know that we've got some payments outstanding from TennCare, that'll self-correct as it typically does in late spring. So you can see here the responses are trending up as well as the transports. So it's pretty much self-explanatory, but I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have on this month's report.
What about, how do you feel about the transition at 911 right now?
I've got a good working relationship with Miss Anderson, and she and I communicate quite frequently. She comes over and we discuss policies and procedures and SOGs, so I think she's, just like I was a year ago, she's
Yeah.
still trying to test the waters and see what's going on, but we've got faith that she'll be able to continue on the good trend.
But as far as the transition, it's still smooth in your department?
Yeah, we've not seen any,
No hiccups?
no hiccups or no ripple effect from the transition. It's been smooth, however, her and Paul have worked out their transition. I don't think that has come outside the center and affected any of us on the other side of the radio. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
How's your, air medical,
I got your-
That has been the snake bite project of the year. A 60-day project has turned into 120 days. It will go live sometime within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Everything is done. They've gotten a CO, but what they're waiting on is Comcast. Everything right now is hinging on Comcast. So just to get Comcast fiber ran to the facility, it has required 3 separate work orders. So you've got a construction phase where they buried the fiber, and then you've got an install phase where they bring the fiber to the building, and then a third contractor has to come and be the activation phase, and that's what they're waiting on to set all of the modems and things like that. Seems like a great way to create a bunch of jobs for people to me, but it's taken a lot longer than it should. It took them 60 days just to get them on site to do that. So you can imagine an air medical service, all their work is highly dependent on federal aviation guidelines, weather, and they've got to have all of these computers that monitor that stuff constantly.
Plus, utilities, slow.
Utilities was slow.
I had to call a Gallatin utility, that took a while. They're inundated with all the growth. Finally got them out there after I made a couple of calls. And we hadn't been able to do the pavement project because the pavement back there is completely falling apart until we get this done, because that's gonna tear new pavement up.
Right.
Which in turn affects our ability to work on the gate system that we've had some issues with, because there's no need of putting gates in until we get the paving done, until we get the facility finished. So it slowed everything down.
So finally, the light at the end of the tunnel doesn't seem like a train any longer. So they're speculating somewhere around maybe the 18th to the 25th of February that they will actually move in. So they've got to do that all in one day, because this aircraft is coming from Lebanon. So this was their flagship aircraft, Life Flight 1. So they'll lift up, come over here, and then they'll send a crew to Lebanon to bring all their furniture and totally deplete that house and move it into this house. So they're good movers. I'm gonna call them next time I need somebody.
Yeah.
They can do all that in one day. So
then when will they be up and running then?
what that day they come. Once they set that aircraft there. Now at nighttime, as long as there is a threat of freeze or frost overnight, they will lift over and go to the airport, and they have leased from the airport a hangar until they get their hangar built, because air medical aircraft are not allowed to fly with frost on the wings. Even if it's a heavy dew, they can't. It changes the aerodynamics. So they can go put it in a hangar. So
They put it in the hangar, but then they can go from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the crew will still stay there, and they'll just kind of rendezvous and meet up and go. It takes a few minutes to fire one off, get it warmed up and ready to lift.
how's your retention? At one point we had a problem with it, but employee retention.
Our employee retention is solely dependent on the hiring phase at Metro. And they were going to have a big hiring in January, and for some reason, I guess it's that budget issue that Chris was talking about. They didn't. They hired 10 or 11, and thankfully, they didn't take any of ours this time. We're down 2 employees right now that we're currently in the process of interviewing for. But, you know, it's always a perpetual process that you get caught up and then you lose a few. So we're trying to keep up with the Joneses a little bit.
Thank you. Emergency Management Agency. I was gonna skip you and see if you noticed, but you were already standing.
All right, you want the bad news or good news first? All right. So I'm gonna talk about radios primarily. Our old system is falling apart. EMS primary, EMA primary, and Sheriff's primary. We're having more problems with Sheriff primary because they do a lot of handheld portable radio communication. So there are a few areas in the county that we're having problems in. We're working to try to mitigate that. But we don't want to put a lot of money into it that we're just going to turn off when this system stands up. So it's not uncommon to get an email from Major Edison saying they're having more problems. Also, on the volunteer fire side, what we know is Control 2, Gallatin, Cottontown, and Southeast Fire are having problems. Okay, and we're trying to figure that problem out. We've got a problem on Music Mountain where we've got interference, so we've got a portion of that disconnected because of that interference. And radio techs are actually going up this week to try to figure out a repair for that to get them back where they need to be, again, until we stand this system up. So comments or questions on that? So
Update on the timeline of when we can stand our own system up.
On the new system, y'all, so all end user equipment for the most part is in. It's being inventoried now, which is a pretty big task. We've turned a portion of the EMA bay over twice with equipment. We're having all the equipment shipped in there. It's being inventoried and it's being taken out. So we've turned it over 2 times with equipment, mostly tower equipment. All system components are in the tower shelters currently. By the end of March, the Cumberland Hills, Sugar Tree, Long Hollow Pike, and the ECC microwave system will be in. They'll begin that microwave ring that we've got. April, May, the completion of Mutton Hollow, Westmoreland, Oak Grove, and Portland. Then May through June, complete the microwave ring for the entire county, which would include Music Mountain, Bethel Road, Center Point, Cumberland Hills, Hendersonville PD, and Boone Holman. So we're talking about a very robust system, a 12-tower system that, by all indication from the techs that are coming in to work on this, they are very impressed with the robust nature of this system. They will do, by mid-June, they are anticipating dry testing where we actually start talking on the system. They've actually got an exhaustive testing program that they've got to go through where they section the county off and they drive the entire county to reach that 95% in-building portable coverage and 3.4 delivered audio quality. If they don't reach that, it's on them to make it talk to those specs. Okay, so that's why they do that testing. In the meantime, we'll be undergoing training. We'll be doing fleet mapping. We'll be doing talk group procedures. We'll be doing dispatch procedures, and we'll be getting everything set to go live on the system. Now, what I've asked them to do is try to have the system go live in August while schools are out. So we don't have to do a switch over, even though all the buses have new radios in them. We did installs on all the school buses last year when school was out. So that has been completed. Actually, it's going along pretty well. We wish it were going along quicker. But a system like this, you can't make it go fast. It is what it is, and it takes a lot to build out and do things right. So, but we are, like the sheriff's office is getting new cars in, so we're issuing those radios out as needed. We've already given sheriff supervisors new portables. We're just getting everything set to go live. So we're pretty excited about it.
Thank you for all you've done on this. Anybody else have any questions, comments?
Just if you really don't have any suggestions, anything that we need to do right now as far as this other goes? I mean, are we just gonna have to kind of muddle our way through it until we can get to August?
We can throw a lot of money at it.
But outside of that.
And we're trying to balance safety and and throwing a lot of money at it. But to replace the components that are failing, it's going to take a lot of money, and we've speak up, Mike. Yeah.
And this is nothing new that I've mentioned before, but heaven forbid, an EMS truck is out somewhere and they get into a fight with a violent person and they need some help. Sheriff's officer is somewhere out and, same situation with him, but radio system is pretty bad. And I hate to speak for the sheriff, but I'm sure that if you were to call him and ask him to go ride with him and sit in the car or sit in one of Chief Miller's ambulances, you would hear the exact same thing, which is static. And it's heaven forbid, again, somebody gets out there and gets hurt because they can't communicate. So I don't know what the answer is other than throwing money at it. But on the other hand, if we've been progressively getting worse, we're digressing here for the last few months, I'm fearful of how it's going to keep getting worse over the next 6 months until we get the system in. So something that's
We'll speak about. We got a roundtable meeting tomorrow with pretty much everybody across the county, but all the county agencies as well, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll talk about that and see what look at what we need to do. So
Safety's a big issue. I mean, it's something we kind of, it's a basic need, is safety. So, let us know. Thank you. Report of Emergency Communications Center. The first one all year.
They just left me hanging. Good evening.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you. And I guess they've turned me loose by myself, so that's probably saying something good.
That is good. That's very good.
Over the last month and a half, I have met with all of my employees. And from my meetings, I've created a outline for the next 3, 6, 9, and 12 months. We've shared that with everyone in the ECC, reported briefly at our prior meetings. And as Chief Miller stated, I've kind of been reviewing our policies and procedures, and there are some that we have that, of course, have to be updated, and there are some that we have that need to be created. So working on that, and also retraining our employees, or recertifying our employees, I should say. Some of the certifications lapsed, and so we've sent a group out to get recertified. And in the next month and a half, the plan is to revamp our training program. Our call stats for last month, we took 28,028 calls. And that's pretty much all I have.
28,020 calls.
28028. So.
Yes. As the elected chairman of our executive committee, and who's here for this committee, we tasked our director with assessing the whole department. The issue we're still having, even though we're not getting complaints now from different entities that I know of, we're always going to get something, but not like it was.
The latest one's on the news, the Metro.
Yes, thank goodness.
We escaped the last news report.
But I just want to bring it to your attention and give you all a heads up. We are still losing a lot of people. We get them trained. It's a revolving door. We get them trained. They leave. They go for better paying jobs. We are down how many staff members, Marilyn?
I would have to say about 9, because since our last meeting, I've lost 2 in the month of January.
How much?
9.
9. And some of the ones that we do have are not fully trained. And so when they get totally competent and fully trained, they tend to leave. So it's going to require us, all of us, I'm not talking about just the county, because remember, we're 6 members, including the county. Our director is going to come up with a plan to try to compensate these employees better so we can retain them. And I just want to give you a heads up. I think it's critical. If we can't do that, no matter who we hire, and I think she's doing a great job, we're going to have an issue with the ECC. So we're looking at having to pay more to the people who are there who are qualified, because these people are qualified at a level that our dispatchers have never been qualified before. They're well-rounded, they can dispatch, and the goal is that they can dispatch to any agency, whether that's fire, sheriff's office, police, EMS, whomever, rather than just specifically
One
doing fire
department.
or doing police or whatever, because we need those employees there to fill in the gaps, if that makes sense. So this is going to be vetted by the operations committee. If you understand how it works, the operations committee is our first responders, our professionals. It's made up of all the agencies, and with her leadership and their direction, they're going to give us a plan of action. And I'm sure it's going to cost money. So I just want to make you aware of that. It's budget time, and we'll need to deal with that soon, but it's not going to be inexpensive. And if we can't solve that particular issue, we're going to have nothing but issues, like problems. So I wanted to make you clearly aware of that, so you're not shocked when you come in. And it's not, this is not being vetted by the politicians, the executive
Right.
committee. We got to go to you for funding. This is vetted by our professionals, our police chiefs, our fire chiefs,
Right, the operations committee.
everyone that's a major stakeholder in the county.
And every municipality and every stakeholder is represented on the operations committee, correct?
Absolutely.
That's what I thought.
And Chief Miller looks like he wants to say something.
Yeah, I could, Madam Chairman. See, one of the issues that would affect Ms. Anderson is also an issue that affects me,
I was wondering about that.
is that, this turnover is, unfortunately, 20 years ago, people had a lot of brand loyalty. They stayed where they got hired at, and they cared about the image or the badge or the logo that they represented. Now,
Can you come a little closer for me? Do you mind?
No,
I
leave
want
it-
to make sure it catches what you're saying.
I will put, you'll see more of this as I prepare my budget for this year, but I think it's necessary that we begin to change the structure of our organizations to allow, we should be able to steal people from other places. And to do that, they need to be able to come in, but not be at a baseline starting salary. They've got, if it's a police officer or a sheriff's deputy, and they've got traffic accident reconstruction certification, and they're TASER certified, and they've got all these, the same thing with a paramedic. If they're critical care and they've got 10 years experience, they need to be paid more than the entry-level field person. But if everybody starts at that same level, then, it's really hard to keep everybody growing up, which in order to do that, you got to give the ones that are there a little bit of bump, because you don't want to hire someone from off the street and making more than someone who's been here.
Be a morale killer.
Yeah, that's a morale killer. So it takes a challenge, and I'm not one of those guys that thinks that the answer to every problem is throwing money at it, but I do think that this one requires a little bit of pay restructuring, and I think that would help her, because she's in a hole right now that going out and hiring lay people is not going to solve it, because it has such a large training curve before they're ready to sit behind the console. She's got to be able to hire people and basically steal them from somewhere else that's already got APCO certifications and NENA certifications that can sit down and do the job today.
And let me add on to that. I want you to all understand that it's important that we have great people working EMS and great police officers like our commissioner. But the ECC is the foundation of the whole public safety. If you can't get that call out, you can't communicate, right, Michael? If you don't understand there's an issue, then we can't respond. And we've got to solve the problem. And we see this, it's all across the board now in county government, because it's built on a system of benefits. And we addressed that in this year's budget with education. That's what that was about. Right, Alan? The teachers were underpaid. We were losing teachers. So they got this bump. But you're seeing that across the board. And a great indicator of that is like maintenance. It's not going to be a problem for me because I've got some guys that's working workforce for several years, right? But the day I leave,
they're all pretty much leaving. And then you won't be able to hire somebody because that's a niche job skill. You know, I can't imagine going out and hiring like Jackie Farley, a guy that's got an electrical license and knows how to do plumbing and carpentry work and can do it all, okay? If you hired a guy like that, today, they're out here earning $100,000 a year. And so that's the issue we're starting to run into, and especially younger people, they are pay sensitive. They don't care about loyalties. And
We don't have any yet. They're too
that's
young.
right. And so I just want you to understand, and I don't want to get into everything, but how critical the ECC is. We've hired a great director, but we're going to have to support her if she's going to be successful. And right now, like the chief said, we're in a hole, and the hole is getting deeper. It's not getting better, and we've got to address that. And I just want you to understand when we bring it to you, this is not some wish list that we're pulling out of a hat that we're just saying we wish we had this. If we don't properly fund them, then you have just, now I'm not saying you, I'm not throwing the monkey on the commission, we have destroyed any chance we have to make that organization successful. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
And we share in the cost of that with the other 6 stakeholders.
Yes, we pay about a third. Now remember, that is all going to be reconfigured after the 2010 census. 20 census, I'm always
I was
behind.
about to say, wow, we're behind. We're behind, we are behind.
But what we, the plan is to actually use population numbers and call volume to reassess this, but we've had so many different issues, we haven't taken that up. But next year, after the census numbers, we will look at that, and those costs will shift a little bit. That's what it's based on.
Have we done any sort of a compensation study?
We're letting them take care of that.
You are working on that?
Through the operations committee. Because I can tell you, Madam Chairman, I don't feel comfortable as an administrator, and that's what your mayors are, to tell them, especially somebody we hired as a professional director, what they need to pay their employees to retain them. And I think our operations committee will have a much better handle on that, and we usually go with their recommendations. So, Ms. Anderson, you want to address any of that?
So I have a site visit scheduled for this Friday with one of our consolidated center. Just gonna go meet, sit down and talk to them, get a feel. We've also reached out to our neighboring jurisdictions to find out just what exactly they're paying, what their plans are, what certifications do they require, and just taking an overall look at how we compare. Just from the meeting with my employees, we have a few part-timers that have left us full-time to go part-time. They've stayed with us part-time and have gone full-time other places. And they're making $2 and $3 more. And to do less work. So that counts for a lot. When you are fully trained and you're here, you've been here through the thick and thin before the consolidation, and then you're still making $15, $16 an hour, you can go and start somewhere else for $18.75, $18.99 to do less work. It's a no-brainer almost.
Sure.
And
Different job or a
same
different-
job,
Same
so a
job
different
with
call
less,
center.
different call center.
with less responsibility.
They're poaching our people that we're training.
That's correct.
Just
What?
Who is Metro? Obviously, we lose medics to Metro, or we're losing
No,
dispatchers to
we're
Metro.
losing them to Goodlettsville.
That's not surprising, I have heard that.
Single
while.
city, my
Yes.
employee,
More than us.
$18,
Yes.
$19. And
They
like you
just,
said,
they just increased in the last year.
See, that's what's
Yep.
killing us.
I knew that was happening. They just did a pay increase in the
they
last year or
just
so.
did, yes.
How many have we lost to Middlesbrough?
I would have to say off the top of my head,
Several.
3 or 4 that I can speak of. No
And some
telling,
before that.
I was gonna say no telling how many's
There were some before
left
that.
before that.
Yes.
Yes.
We started the exit.
I was gonna say,
When did that start?
prior to me
About a
getting
year
here.
ago, About the time Commander Rosemar came in.
The executive committee asked for that.
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
so that'll be published as well. well, can we get that? Can we see why people are leaving?
So the
I have
results in a
not in the-
compilation of,
Actually, I can say, I'm sorry to cut you off, ma'am. I've had two leave in my 30 days, I would say, 60 days. One walked in, turned in a resignation, and that was it. And the other employee I sat down with, and she is leaving to go to the sheriff's office to do teletype, less stress and more money. For communications,
Yes.
$14.99 or $14.75, something like that, less than $15 walking in the door. And that's regardless of currently if you have experience from anywhere or not. Like Chief Miller just said, most other agencies, if you have experience and you have certifications, you're able to negotiate your salary. We don't have that in place. So that plays a role in it. So you're coming in, and if you did 10 years somewhere else, you've been a supervisor, you've been other, you had other responsibilities and other certs, you're coming in now and you're starting at $15, if that. Then you have to go through the phases of training. And as you go through, by the time you're certified, at the end of the day, we're still at $16.
If there was an existing senior employee at EMS or the sheriff's office or Gallatin, and they came over in 2017 when Consolidated Dispatch opened, were they making the exact same money as brand new people?
There was a pay schedule put in where they might not have been at base pay, but because, and I don't remember exactly how they did it, but they kind of just told them, here's what the pay's gonna be. If you wanna come. If you wanna try to find something at your existing agency.
Because that's what our budget was. And then what's happened is they were trained a certain way. They had to be completely retrained. I don't think there's hardly any original employees left, is there?
very few.
We have a few, but not an awful lot, and part of the crisis we're running into now is the cross-training process. You have those that came from your smaller agencies that's all they did, and now we're trying to cross-train them to do a Hendersonville or county. When you've only handled Millersville or Portland, that's a huge transition for someone who's not accustomed to that call volume and radio traffic.
I can tell you this. I've seen, I chaired the ECC when it started, and the way it is, it rotates between the three large entities. Three small entities never chair till they get to a certain threshold. And so it's between the county, the city of Hendersonville, and the city of Gallatin. And there's been a complete shift in the way the executive committee feels. At first, when we started, they were like, we got to hold the line, we got to, keep everybody happy, we got to keep our legislature. Now they're like, if we don't do something to support our new director, because we got the right director in, we're going to have some major problems. Now, Paul Hopsmeyer came in, stabilized the organization. He did a good job.
Very much so.
And Marilyn is doing a good job keeping everything running smooth so far. It's not going to last, and we know that.
We can
So-
only do so much.
But it's market forces, and it's not just there. I mean, we see it across the board, and it's real, and we've got to deal with it. So that's why I wanted to have this frank conversation with you. So when I bring you whatever the recommendation is from the executive committee, you don't just say, "Oh my God, they're in the headlights. We can't do that." Well, we got a lot riding on this, and you know it. That's your line of work. That's your profession. We've got to get this right. We've got a great facility. We've got great personnel. We've just got to pay them. We've got to compensate them for what they do.
We need to prepare a budget committee for that as well somehow, though.
Well, it's
They
got
need to be-
to come through this committee, and that's right. But I mean, it's got to have a strong recommendation because it's too important to let it fail. And I think you're going to see that from every entity. Do you get that feeling, Meryl?
Yes.
It's not just me coming, because you got the mayors in the same situation.
Well, almost any job you go to, I mean, if I go to apply a job at Target to be a cashier, I'm gonna get paid a little bit more if I've been being a cashier in retail for the last 5 to 10 years.
And
I'm gonna get paid more than the 18-year-old that walks in off the
a
street.
lot of times, and you understand this, Michael, with like the sheriff's office. Well, the sheriff's protective. He wants money for his budget, right? But I don't think the sheriff nor you, Chief Miller, you guys are not saying, whoa, we don't want to give any more money to these guys because we want money for our departments. You need money, but you know how important this is too, right? So we're seeing that with the operations committee.
Okay. Well, as much data and information you can give us, prepare us with, both of you, all of you, that would be great. As far as compensation studies and,
No, we're doing this
We're-
on our own. We have not gone out to recruit a company. If we do
Right.
a company, it's gonna cost money and it's gonna take a longer period of time. So we're doing a preliminary.
well, that's
We
what I'm saying,
just-
preliminary, I think for now is good, and then we can evaluate it and go from there.
Absolutely.
I know how sensitive this is. There's a special news segment tonight.
Yes.
At 6 o'clock. It's
On the
either on
news.
Fox News or Channel 5. I can't
It's
remember.
Channel 5.
Yeah,
Channel five.
Channel 5.
About 911.
Yep.
I saw
Why
it.
can't we
That was
find you?
levels. The entire system of 911 was built on landlines. You call from your landline at home. Nobody has those anymore. They call from cell phones. And those calls are getting dropped and getting lost, and takes it away. And now there has been case law precedent set that they're holding cities and the counties who operate these 911 centers liable and responsible for not having enough dispatchers and not having enough call takers, not having the technology to answer these calls and get their responders out to the right place. So, yeah, that's the first line. Doesn't matter how good my medics are, we can't do a better job if we can't get on scene.
And these jobs are technical jobs now.
They're
We're
not
hiring people in
secretaries.
$15 an hour. I'm shocked, and I'll tell you why. I've got that little farm, full with some cattle. I can't hire anybody to help me for $15 an hour and paying them cash.
And we're talking life-saving business here.
Well, I mean, McDonald's is starting to people off $15 an hour, and I don't think that's real stressful.
So,
Well,
I
Might
mean,
be, you know.
It depends.
and I hate to be an alarmist, because when you hear from me, I'm always, well, we got this, we got that, but it's really something that really needs to
Public
be
safety is
addressed.
something that we need to be alarmed about, and we need to be, it's a basic primary function of what we're supposed to be doing, in my mind, so.
That's all I
Okay.
have for my first report.
All right. Well, if you don't mind emailing me your report and then emailing me kind of as you find information out.
Absolutely.
Just send me an email, just kind of keep me up to date. That'd be great. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Old business? Seeing none. New business. Donation of worn out green uniform pants to Goodwill.
This just is something that the sheriff's office has, and we're gonna donate it to Goodwill. It's not even, it says sheriff's office, it's just some pants. And we're just gonna donate to Goodwill, and you can declare surplus, but they're not gonna sell them.
Attorney, can we just do this blanketly? Anybody's got used clothes for everyone? Because nobody's gonna buy a bunch of old used uniforms, and we don't wanna give them out anyway with our names on
I
them.
realize that, but we're gonna have to do that commission-wide, and it would have to go through Gen Ops. Sorry.
The other process. All right, so I got a
All the
motion from Commissioner Guthrie, second from Commissioner Driver. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. A resolution encouraging the support of legislation which directs TennCare to reimburse ground ambulance providers at a rate not less than the current Medicare fee schedule and adding funding to the 2021 state budget attached.
This is basically just a resolution they're trying to get passed by all counties in an effort to remind our representatives and even the federal government that we really, really need to be paid. All citizens shouldn't be covering the cost of this because they've decided to cut the TennCare funding, and Chief Miller can do this a whole lot better than me, so.
For us, we had a study, this is applicable to all of Middle Tennessee, because we have similar pay rates and structure. For us to run an ambulance call, time we respond to the house, we pick up the patient, let's say they were just complaining of chest pain. They got oxygen, they got an IV, they got a cardiac monitor, we transported them to the hospital. What that costs Sumner County is between $400 and $450. So that's what we have invested. If you figure the cost of the ambulance divided over the number of calls it's going to run in its life, et cetera. Salaries and benefits. When TennCare was established several years ago, they set a rate for what they would reimburse ambulances for. Regardless of what we bill, Medicare, TennCare, they just say, here's what we're gonna give you. That's what you get. TennCare rate has never been adjusted. It's the same as it always has been. So a TennCare rate for that call that cost us $450 is $125. Medicare is now $265 plus so many dollars a mile. So this legislation, they would not allow us to even consider going above and beyond what the federal government supplies as Medicare. It's just to say, hey, as Tennessee, will you at least bump it up equal to what Medicare rate is, which is around $260 some a call. We're still going in the red every time, but not hemorrhaging as bad. This has already gone before the governor. It's going to have a fiscal note of $60 million a year. The state government, that's who supports TennCare. But he's in support of it. We've got some local representatives and senators that are championing this, even the ones that are in our own county. So we've already also met with the governor and the County Mayors Association across the state of Tennessee and have gotten support from all of them. So they felt like, our lobbyists felt like this would be a great show of support to get as many of the 95 counties across Tennessee to pass a resolution also supporting this. That way when it hit the floor, it's a little bit harder to deny.
Let me make one other statement. When Chief Norris says it costs $450 to run the ambulance, that's just basic care.
Yeah.
The ambulance bill normally is a whole lot more than that, because very rarely do you just go and pick somebody up. You've got mileage, you've got medication, you've got.
There's one needle that we have to give to patients that are in shock. The needle itself is $110. One needle.
So if you have somebody call you and go, well, I saw on the owl where it's $450 and I got a bill for $875. You know, it's,
And that was just one example.
you get charged by the services provided to you.
Something like this passed through our committee within the last year or two.
We've tried it for years and years and years. This is really the first concerted effort by the state, because see, the thing that's so crazy, and this is what doesn't make any sense to me, Medicare and TennCare pay different amounts to different counties. And for a long time, what West Tennessee has always had the highest rates. I just know that whenever I would talk to county attorneys about stuff like this and other parts of the county, other parts of the state, they were like, oh no, we're okay with it. Because you get, it's just, it varies from county to county. I don't know why.
And they don't have a scale or something that shows how they justify what they're paying?
No.
That seems interesting.
Well, that's typical though. Rural counties, they operate by different rules than counties like ours, like urban counties. They're much more restrictive. They require us to pay more, and they require us to do more. Whether it's stormwater or whatever.
All in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Okay. Last thing.
Motion to adjourn.
All right.